Hi everyone, I'm Mike, and this is the Sunday Art Show. So it's another viewer request video this week, and I'm going to be working on a painting of a black Angus bull. And quite often I start out with blue for my outline work, but today I thought I'd go with a little bit of burnt umber. These are the interactive acrylics, and I'm working on an A3 mixed media board. So it's basically just mixed media paper, but it's bonded onto a piece of cardboard. So I guess it's about 3 or 4 mil thick, something like that, and consequently, it doesn't buckle at all. So it's a really nice surface to paint on. And while I've been chatting away, I've just been putting in some loose line work, keeping the shapes very simple. And I'm not doing any measuring at all, actually. I'm just doing this, trusting my eye to get it right. And then when I've done that, I'll do a little bit of measuring, and we'll see what mistakes I've made, and hopefully we'll correct those. So I want to create a little bit of a sense of movement with this one. And one of the ways to do that is to make the animal look like it's ever so slightly off balance, because that tends to imply it would have to move in the next second or so in order to catch itself, and maybe have 1 or 2 of the feet slightly off the ground. So there's our rough outline. So I'm going to go back round again now, sticking with the burnt umber. Sometimes I change colour to do this, but I thought I'd just stay with the same colour today. And as we go round, we can just refine lines here and there. Now I've just noticed that the shape of the head, I'd almost created a caricature, really, or caricature rather. So just need to change that a little bit. It's mostly the nose that has gone a little bit astray. So just making that line more vertical has made things a little bit more convincing there. And then the line of the back needed a minor adjustment. And now I'm just adding a few extra lines here to indicate some of the planes. Obviously the shape of an animal's body is, especially something as muscular as a bull, it's quite a lot of complex shapes. So I tend to start by trying to keep things simple and just putting a few lines in here and there, which will hopefully help me a bit later on. So I'm really just picking out shapes on the animal's body. So this guy's not looking too bad now, so I'm going to block in with some colour. And to do that, I'm going to continue with the burnt umber. I've got that on the palette, and it's obviously a dark colour. The animal is black, so it seems like a good place to start. But I've just switched to a larger brush. Now at this stage I'm keeping the paint fairly thin so that the brush marks show up. And my plan for this one is to create, you know, the black, the darkest colours with a few different layers, and hopefully we'll be able to put those layers down in a fairly transparent way, and by overlaying the thin layers that'll build up a depth of tone for us. Just gave the board a coating of water with the water spray, just because I found that the paint wasn't flowing quite as smoothly as I wanted. It's perhaps gone a little bit too watery now, but we can live with that. I think it's as I said, this is just the first layer. Next I'm going to add a layer of mid-tone, and I've created this with some permanent alizarin. I think that's how you pronounce it. First time I've used this colour, I think. Possibly only the second. I just bought this paint fairly recently. And that's mixed in with the burnt umber. And so my plan is to add some regions of deeper shadow, and keeping the areas where the light is falling on the animal, just allow that first layer of paint to show through, at least for the moment. So we're really just blocking in shapes of darkness here. And the trick is to try not to be lured in by too much detail, because it's very tempting to draw in a nostril or an eye at this stage. But generally speaking, I would recommend not doing that just yet. So I'm quite enjoying this this colour that I've got mixed up here. So I'm going to use that to put in a cast shadow. Just putting on the paint kind of thin, moving the brush around a lot to begin to suggest, you know, there's some grass that the bull is wandering through. And then we'll put in a loose and fluffy horizon line as well. So we're still going with the same brush here, but now I've mixed in some of the red that I was using earlier and I've added in some ultramarine blue. And so my plan here is to coat most of the animal with this one colour fairly thinly. Now I've just sprayed the surface of the painting again with water, and I must confess I hadn't actually thought that through quite as carefully as I might. Because I'm using the interactive acrylics, I think my brain switched to conventional acrylic thinking. So we're going to get some of those underlayers moving around, which is not necessarily a bad thing now that I've remembered that that's the case, but it wasn't quite what I was planning to do. But we'll press on. I think it will work out fine. So I'll give the, now that we're working wet and wet, we'll keep the paint wet. What I'm going to do now is I've added a little bit of titanium white to that colour I was using, and we'll just add in some fairly soft highlights. So this is the first stage of the highlight process. I will pick out even lighter areas in just a little moment. But you can see that by bringing in the highlight colour, I hope it's showing up on camera. It's quite difficult, filming sometimes when you're painting dark animals. So hopefully this is going to show up okay. But one of the top tips I would say if you are painting something which is very dark, whether it's a fabric or an animal, whatever it is, you don't want to make your highlights too light. Initially, certainly you want to keep them very subdued, and then you can always lighten them, gradually. Which is what I'm planning to do here. let's try that now. A little bit more water, a little bit more white on the brush, and now just want to pick out the lightest areas, but as I do this I don't want to go too crazy. In other words, I don't want things to be overly bright. There is a brighter area here though around the nostril. So at this stage we can start to indicate some of the smaller features. Now the bull is starting to come together. What I need to do now is add a few very bright highlights, a few very dark darks, and a few details. But before I do that, I'm going to put in a background here. So this is some cadmium yellow deep. And again, this is a colour I don't normally use. This is just straight out of the tube. I haven't added any other paints to the mixture. And it's really a lovely colour actually. It's almost luminescent. So what I'm doing is I'm just working my way around the outline, and as I do that I'm refining and making little corrections to my drawing. So if there's, in other words, if there's a lumpy bit, I'm removing the lump with the yellow. So I'm going to do that all the way around the animal now. So adding that background in has started to really bring the image to life. And while that paint is still drying, I'm just going to put in a little bit of colour on the hooves, which I more or less neglected up until now. So this is a mixture of titanium white along with a little bit of the red that I was using, some of the blue, and some of the yellow that I used for the background. So very small quantities of each of the three primaries, but yeah, so it's mostly titanium white, but just needed a little bit of definition at the end of the legs here. So we'll come back to that in just a second. But now really what I want to do is put in some very dark lines and shadows around this front of the animal, and then we'll do the nostrils and the eyes, and then we'll be more or less done, I think. So here we go with our very, very dark regions. So this is almost entirely ultramarine blue, but I have added some burnt umber and a little touch of the red as well, just so we've got a little bit of color coherence occurring across the entire animal. And what I'm hoping is, as I put these very darks in, that's going to start to bring some of the highlights that I've got here to life. But as always, we'll see how it goes, and it's always a case of making adjustments as we go along. Now, I've just put an area of dark into the eye there, but we do need to go back to the eye to add some finer detail. And then one of the things I'm watching here is I don't want to undo all of what I've done before. So I don't want to lose some of the textures that we got down in the very early stages. So I'm trying to be a little bit selective. About where I add the darkest of the darks. I picked up a little bit of yellow on my brush there from the still wet background, and that wasn't intentional, but I quite like the effect that occurred there. So I think I'm going to let that one dry, put in a bit of colour on the ground, and then we'll come back and maybe do some other finishing touches. And I like that purple colour so much that I decided to just scumble a little bit of that onto the bull as well, because that's going to keep that colour coherence going that we talked about earlier. And that's pretty much finished. Let me give you a quick zoom in on some of the brushwork. And of course you can visit my website at the link in the description if you want to look around the painting. But here's the finished pick, a black Angus bull. As I said at the start, viewer request. So if there's anything else you want me to paint, just let me know. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next Sunday for the next episode of The Sunday Art Show. Thanks again for watching.